Hello everybody and welcome to Square Balloon Actions and Tutorials. This tutorial is for Photoshop CS. I'm going to be using Photoshop CS6, but it'll work for previous versions just as well. So in this tutorial I'm going to do a little bit of editing on the baby's skin. I'm also going to do a background blanket fade, and I'm going to show you how to change the color of an element within the picture. So in this case, for the first one, we're going to change the color of the hat, and the second one, we're going to change the color of the blanket. We'll do that with two steps. The first one is with hue saturation, and the second one will be with using the color mode on the brush. So first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to just edit the skin very quickly. Just use the spot removal tool to get rid of any little bumps and scratches, and then I'm going to run my first one I usually run on a newborn is the red skin removal. Make the brush a bit smaller, bring the opacity up to 100% just to take off the red. And the next one action that I'm going to use is skin smoothing. And always with skin smoothing, just avoid the features, just go on the skin so that you're not blurring the important lines. You don't want it to look too dull like. And I'm also going to use iDefine, which I would almost always use if I'm doing any kind of skin smoothing, and that's just to sharpen up the things like eyelashes and lips and things that you want to give a little bit of definition to. I'm going to also run Paint on Warmth just to give a little bit of warmth to the skin, and I'm going to paint this on at 100% so that I can fade it if I need to. I'll just fade it a little bit off from around the eyes there, and I can fade it off by clicking to a black brush, bringing the opacity down. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use Lighten Up, because I just want to bring the mid-tones up of the face just a little bit, and maybe of this foot here at the back. Okay, so I'm happy enough with the skin now. There's before and after. So that was a quick edit. So we'll flatten that down. So I'm going to do a blanket fade. This image here was taken by Sherry Peroni of Sherry Peroni Photography. And the blanket is almost perfect, but I'm just going to do a blanket fade to show you how you might use it on another image if you need to. So I'm going to click on, I'm going to do it with a radial gradient. So I've got my gradient icon here. I've got radial gradient on, which is the second one over. And the first thing for my foreground, I'm going to choose a color from beside the baby. And for my background color, I'm going to choose a color that I would like to have up in the corners. So let's try that one. Maybe a little bit darker actually. Okay, so we'll get a new layer and make our gradient. So there's our gradient. It's a little bit dark over in this corner. Let's just bring it up a little bit. Okay, we'll deal with that afterwards. So just take the visibility of that off for a second, and we're going to use the quick selection tool to select the baby and the hat, because obviously we don't want our gradient to go anywhere on top of this baby. We're going to be masking back anyway, but this will just make sure that none of it is on here to start. And we can use the Alt tool or the Alt button to give us a minus selection as well. We'll refine the edge once it's all selected. And we can see we've got a nice soft blend there. I use Smart Radius, and I've got my output set to selection. And once we have that selection made, we can go back on our top layer, and if we hold down Alt, when we click on the mask icon, the baby's automatically masked back. So now we just need to blend it a little bit better. We want to bring in some of the texture that we had in front of the baby here. And we do that by using the black paintbrush. I'm going to make a nice big soft paintbrush. and we're going to paint on the mask. Oops, sorry, a paintbrush. So we'll bring the opacity up to 100%. I'm just going to paint there to bring that back in. So once we've got the texture, a little bit of texture at the front, I'm going to lower the opacity just to help fade it off. So this bit up here is looking much darker than I would like. So now I can click onto the gradient itself and I can choose a color that I want it to be, and I can just paint on that, make it a little bit lighter there. I like it to be a little bit lighter over the baby, just up here too. Bring my opacity down again. So we don't want this all to be one color. We want it to be, give the impression that it was fading off naturally. So I don't mind that it's a little bit darker up there in the corner. Now if you've got your gradient like this, it can be a good idea as well to, sometimes you get a little bit of banding depending on what color you use. This color is quite forgiving, but what often helps is if you click on this, the color here, the color square, and you filter, go to filter noise, add noise, and just add about 1 or 2%, and that'll help, really help well with the banding. So I'm happy there with the fade off. That looks pretty good. So now we're going to deal with the color. So we're going to change the hat color first, and we're going to do that again with by selecting with the quick selection tool. We're going to just select the hat this time. So we just click and drag. Just make sure that all that hat is selected. This quick selection tool is an excellent tool. Okay, so once that's all selected, we'll refine the edge. We have good smoothness around the edge. And we have that selection. I'm going to duplicate this image before I do my hue saturation adjustments, just so that if I make any mistakes I can mask back. So go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and I'm going to use the hue slider to bring it down to a color that I think matches nicely with the background. You can play with the saturation as well. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So we'll go OK. And when we deselect, we can see there's a little bit of bluish fringing. The background is still, you can still see it through here. So we need to deal with that. And the way we deal with that is the same way as we deal with color casts. We're going to use a paintbrush. We're going to set the blend mode of the paintbrush to color, and then we're just going to color on in the color that we want. So let me just mask back this little bit in here that didn't select quite right. So I'm going to do that with the paintbrush, the black paintbrush first, just to get rid of that in there. Okay, so now we're going to use our paintbrush. I'm going to choose a color, so you can see the blue that's around here that we want to get rid of, and I'm going to choose a good shadow, a skin color from the shadows. So there's our color there, and so I'm going to set the mode to color, and I'm going to bring the opacity just down a little bit, and I'm just going to start painting. Let's bring it down a little bit more. I'm just going to paint on in that skin color just up at the edge. So I'm just dealing with getting rid of that fringing. And then for the hat, I'm going to choose a color from the hat. This time I'll bring it up, the opacity up another little bit. So if there's bits of the hat that I want to be yellow and they're purple, I'm just going to paint over with yellow. It does a really good job of this. So I'll just go around the edge and anywhere where I can see that purple color. I'm just going to paint. It's a little bit green down here, so just rectify So you can see that's done a pretty good job there of getting rid of that fringing that we had. So that's the color of the hat changed. I'm going to duplicate this this image here. Yeah, I'm going to duplicate the image so we can just have them side by side. So for this one here, I'm going to get rid of the hat there, and this time I'm going to select the blanket. So just go all the way around, and then I'm holding down Alt to get minus to deselect those bits that I didn't want to select. I'm just going to do exactly the same thing, but this time with the blanket. Okay, we'll refine the edge again. And I'll just get rid of this one. So I duplicate my layer, and I'm going to go into Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and this time I'm going to bring it up into the sort of blues. It's up into the turquoise and blues, bring the saturation down. So I'm just again deciding what kind of color I would like. I think that's a pretty nice color, so we'll go okay. And again, we have more bits of fringing, so go back in, and with my paintbrush set to color mode, and I've a high opacity there of 85. I'm just going to paint over those yellow bits with the blue color. And we'll just, obviously there's not going to be anything here this time because I didn't change the color near the skin there. So you can just go around and just make sure that you've got all the fringing. Just pull back a little bit. This is a little bit pale yellow around here, so if I bring my opacity right down 20%, I'm just going to go over the edge of that just to get rid of that yellow color. So there you can see, I'll just get rid of these two underneath. So there you can see two different color changes, the hat in this one and the background blanket in this one.